Commander Vextral stood motionless at the viewport, his orange and black striped fur reflecting the pale blue light of Kinta's third moon. 6 seconds passed. 7, 8, 9. He remained alive. Interesting, he muttered, tapping a claw against the transparent aluminum. The Drekken base sprawled before him, nestled in a valley, surrounded by dense forest and rolling hills, perfect sniper territory. Yet no bullet had found him, despite breaking the 6-second rule. "Sir, with respect, you're making yourself a target," Lieutenant Krasta hissed from the doorway, his tail twitching anxiously. Vextral turned, pupils narrowing to vertical slits. "That's precisely the point, Lieutenant. Our intelligence suggests the humans have withdrawn from this sector. I'm testing the theory." "The humans never withdraw, sir. They merely reposition." Spoken like someone who's been listening to campfire stories. Vextral flicked his ears dismissively. "The technophage has cut them off from their precious technology. Without their targeting systems and communication arrays, they're blind and deaf." "Then how do you explain the casualties, sir?" 326 confirmed kills across this hemisphere alone, many of them officers. Vextral's whiskers tensed. He'd lost 2 brothers to human snipers in the early days of the occupation, before they'd understood what they were dealing with, before the tigers had learned to fear the apes. Primitive projectile weapons and luck, nothing more. The High Command has confirmed the human fleet remains engaged at Proxima Centauri. These are just scattered resistance fighters, using archaic equipment that bypasses our technophage. A distant explosion interrupted their conversation, followed by the base alarm. Vextral sprang to the communications panel, claws extended. "Report. Ammunition depot. 3 has been hit, sir," came the panicked response. Secondary explosions triggered. "We've lost the eastern defensive perimeter." "Impossible. That's 2 kilometers from the nearest cover." "Sir, you need to see this," Krasta said, pointing to the surveillance feeds. The screens showed the burning depot, but something else caught Vextral's attention. Tiny dark shapes, like falling leaves, were descending from the upper atmosphere. "Magnify Sector 12, he ordered. The image zoomed in on one of the shapes, revealing a primitive contraption of canvas and wood, a glider, with a human strapped underneath it. "They're dropping from orbit," Vextral whispered, a cold realization dawning. "No electronics, no engines, just falling." "Sir, orbital insertion without technology is suicidal." "Apparently not for humans." Vextral bared his teeth. "Sound general quarters. Activate all ground-to-air defenses." "The defenses won't target them, sir. They're not registering as threats because they have no power signature." Vextral slammed a fist onto the console. "Then get every soldier with eyes on the sky and weapons ready. They're coming to finish what the snipers started." Captain Marina Kovac felt the familiar rush of adrenaline as she guided her orbital glider through the upper atmosphere of Kinta. The canvas wings glowed red-hot at the edges but held together, another testament to the genius of blending ancient human techniques with subtle material science advancements. No electronics meant no detection by the technophage. No engines meant no heat signature for Drekken defenses to lock onto. Just wood, canvas, carbon fiber, and human ingenuity. Her earpiece, a simple acoustic tube connected to a receiver in her helmet, crackled with the voice of her spotter, Sergeant Wei. "Wind changing at 3,000 meters, Captain. Eastern corridor is opening up." The voice was transmitted from another glider, 2 kilometers away, using nothing but modulated sound waves bounced off the atmosphere, technology from Earth's Second World War, repurposed for interstellar combat. "Copy that," Marina replied into her throat microphone, another mechanical wonder that required no electricity. "Strike team, adjust course to Vector 9. Behind her, 50 silent gliders banked in unison, black wings against the stars. Nomad fleet reckon, the best of the best. They'd been fighting the Drekken for 3 years now, learning their weaknesses, exploiting their arrogance. The technophage had been the Drekken's greatest triumph and their greatest mistake. They'd become so dependent on advanced technology that they'd forgotten how to fight without it. Humans, with their bloody history of warfare, had not. Marina checked her altimeter, a simple pressure gauge, and began her final approach. Below, the Kinta resistance fighters would be watching, ready to coordinate ground support, using nothing but mirrors and sunlight. The concept of heliography had been explained to the antelope-like aliens, who had adapted it with remarkable efficiency. 3 kilometers from the Drekken base, Marina spotted her landing zone, a small clearing in the dense forest. She pulled the release for her harness, separating from the glider and free-falling the last 200 meters. The special forces suit she wore absorbed the impact as she rolled onto the soft forest floor. Sergeant Wei landed moments later, already assembling his spotting equipment, a brass telescope mounted on a wooden tripod. "Welcome to Kinta, Captain," came a soft voice from the trees. A tall Kinta stepped into view, antlers adorned with strips of fabric that helped break up his silhouette. "I am Simish. We've been expecting you." Marina nodded respectfully. "Situation report. The Drekken have reinforced their northern perimeter since your advance team's attack on their ammunition depot. They've moved their command center underground and doubled their patrols." "Predictable," Marina said, unslinging the long case from her back. Inside was a Macmillan TAC-50 sniper rifle, a design nearly unchanged for centuries. "They always think deeper is safer, until we introduce them to bunker busters," Wei added with a grim smile, adjusting his brass telescope. Marina began assembling her rifle with practiced hands. "The primary target remains Commander Vextral." Simish nodded, his large eyes reflecting the dappled sunlight. "He's the architect of the massacre at Kinta's southern continent. 3 million of my people slaughtered when they refused evacuation. Then today he answers for it," Marina promised, loading a specialized round into the chamber. "No electronics, no guidance systems, just precise engineering and human skill. The resistance has prepared as you requested," Simish said, gesturing to several Kinta emerging from camouflaged positions. "We've established relay positions every half-kilometer to the base perimeter." Marina nodded approvingly. The Kinta had learned quickly. What they lacked in natural aggression, they made up for in determination and adaptability. "Show me the approach," she said, following Simish deeper into the forest, as her team continued to land silently around them, warriors from Earth dropping like deadly seeds onto alien soil. Young Private Tazril had never seen a human before. 3 months into his first deployment, and all he'd encountered were Kinta rebels, herbivores playing at war, as his sergeant called them. But humans, they were the stuff of nightmares in the barracks. "They can see in the dark like we can," his bunkmate had told him. "And they don't need to sleep for days when they're hunting. They just keep coming." Tazril had laughed it off, exaggerations to frighten new recruits. But now, as he patrolled the perimeter in the growing twilight, every shadow seemed to hide one of the legendary human snipers. 6 seconds, he remembered. Never stand still for more than 6 seconds. He continued his patrol, counting under his breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, move. A twig snapped somewhere in the darkness. Tazril froze, his fur bristling. The light amplification in his helmet, one of the few technologies the Drekken had managed to shield from the technophage, revealed nothing unusual in the underbrush, but something felt wrong. The night creatures had gone silent. The constant chorus of Kinta's indigenous life had ceased, as if holding its breath. Tazril raised his plasma rifle, activating the targeting system. Nothing registered. He switched to thermal, scanning the tree line. Still nothing. Relief began to wash over him. Just nerves. He was jumpy from all the stories, The projectile struck him in the chest with such force that he was thrown backward, his armor cracking like an eggshell. There was no pain, only confusion as his body refused to respond to his commands. As consciousness faded, he saw a figure emerge from the tree line, bipedal, moving with predatory grace. Not a kinter, the creature knelt beside him, and Tazril found himself looking into the strangest eyes he'd ever seen. Round pupils, forward-facing, hunter's eyes, like his own, but set in an alien face. "Rest easy, soldier," the human said in perfect Drekan, its strange five-fingered hand closing Tazril's eyes. "Your war is over." Commander Vextral studied the holographic display of the base perimeter, watching as another sensor node went dark. "That's the fifth one in an hour," Lieutenant Krasda observed. "They're systematically blinding us." Without triggering any alarms, Vextral added, "No electronic signatures, no explosions. They're disabling them manually." The command bunker 50 meters beneath the surface buzzed with nervous energy. Officers moved between stations with barely contained panic, their tails lashing anxiously. "Sir, we've lost contact with 3 more patrols," a communications officer reported. "No distress signals, they simply stopped responding." Vextral growled, a low rumble in his chest. "Deploy the combat drones." "Sir, the last time we deployed drones, the humans used them against us. The technophage can't distinguish friend from foe once they're compromised." "I'm aware of the risks, Lieutenant, but we need eyes out there." Vextral turned to the weapons officer. "And prepare the pulse cannons. If they want to wage a primitive war, let's show them what happens when they bring knives to a plasma fight." An alarm blared, cutting through the tension in the bunker. Red emergency lighting bathed the command center. "Report," Vextral demanded. "Perimeter breach in sectors 7 through 12, the security officer replied, voice tight with stress. "Multiple intruders, and sir, they're inside the base." "How many?" "Unknown. Surveillance is compromised." Vextral unholstered his sidearm, checking the charge. "Lock down all sensitive areas." "Authorization, Vextral Prime 7. "Sir," Krasda said hesitantly, "perhaps we should consider tactical withdrawal. Reinforcements won't arrive for 3 days, and if the humans have breached the base in force, we are Drekan," Vextral snarled. "We do not retreat from primitive mammals wielding sticks and stones." The bunker door sealed with a hiss of hydraulics, isolating the command center from the rest of the base. Vextral felt a momentary sense of security. The bunker was designed to withstand orbital bombardment. No primitive human weapon could penetrate it. The lights flickered, then stabilized. "Sir," the engineering officer called out, "someone is tampering with the power distribution node. Override." "I can't, sir. They're not using the system. They're physically altering the hardware." Vextral's claws extended involuntarily. "Seal all access points to the distribution node and deploy security teams." "Security teams are not responding, sir." A new alarm sounded, this one more urgent. The environmental display flashed warnings across all sectors. "They've breached the life support systems," the engineering officer reported, panic evident in his voice. "Oxygen levels are being reduced throughout the bunker. Switch to emergency reserves." "Already done, sir, but they won't last more than an hour." Vextral paced the command center, mind racing. How had it come to this? The Drekan technocracy, masters of 100 star systems, being systematically dismantled by humans using technology that predated space travel. "Sir," Lieutenant Krasda said quietly, "I believe I understand their strategy now." "Enlighten me, Lieutenant," Vextral replied, an edge to his voice. "They're not trying to destroy our technology. They're using our dependence on it against us." Krasda gestured to the various systems flashing warnings. "They knew we would retreat to the most secure, most isolated, most technology-dependent part of the base. The bunker," Vextral realized. "We've trapped ourselves. Yes, sir. And now they're simply turning off our life support. No electronics required. A slow clapping sound echoed through the command center. All heads turned toward the source, a ventilation grate high on the wall, now open. A human female sat perched in the opening, dressed in dark clothing that seemed to absorb light. "Very good, Lieutenant," she said in accented but clear Draken. "You're quicker than most." Weapons were raised instantly, but the human showed no concern. "I wouldn't," she advised. "Plasma weapons in an enclosed space with failing life support. You'd cook yourselves before the shots reached me." Vextrol stepped forward, drawing himself to his full height, nearly twice that of the human. "You are addressing Commander Vextrol of the Drekan Technocracy's 17th Expeditionary Force. Identify yourself." The human smiled, an expression that displayed flat teeth unsuited for proper hunting. "Captain Marina Kovac, Nomad Fleet Recon, Earth Defense Forces." She tilted her head. "But you can call me Demon. I believe that's what your soldiers have been calling us." "Captain Demon," Vextrol said, testing the strange name. "I assume you're here to negotiate our surrender." Captain Kovac's expression hardened. "No, Commander. I'm here to inform you of it. Your base is overrun. Your troops are either dead or captured. The only question is whether you and your command staff join them in captivity, or in death. You expect me to believe that a handful of humans with primitive weapons have defeated a fully equipped Drakon battle group. I expect you to look at your own displays, Commander. You've lost contact with your entire force. Your life support is failing. Your backup generators will be offline in she checked a mechanical device on her wrist. Approximately 12 minutes. When that happens, the blast doors will fail, and my team will enter. What happens then is entirely up to you." Vextrol looked around the command center, seeing the fear in the eyes of his officers. Their technology, their advantage, had been systematically neutralized. They were cornered predators facing a more cunning hunter. "And if we surrender?" he asked, the words bitter in his mouth. "You will be treated according to interstellar conventions on prisoners of war. Your wounded will receive medical attention. In time you will be repatriated to Drakon space. And the price for this mercy." Captain Kovac's expression didn't change. The immediate withdrawal of all Drakon forces from Kinta space. A formal apology to the Kinta people for the atrocities committed against them. Reparations to be determined by a neutral third party. The technocracy will never agree to such terms. Then perhaps you should explain to them how a species you dismissed as primitive apes dismantled your most advanced battle group, using technology your ancestors would have recognized. Captain Kovac checked her wrist device again. "You have 11 minutes to decide, Commander. Choose wisely." She disappeared from the ventilation shaft, leaving Vextrol staring at the empty space where she had been. "Sir," Lieutenant Craster said softly. "What are your orders?" Vextrol looked at the displays showing the failing systems, at the officers awaiting his command, at the legacy of Drakon military pride stretching back millennia, all of it brought low by humans who had refused to fight the way the Drakon expected them to fight. "Send the surrender signal," he said finally, "and pray to the ancestors that the technocracy learns from our mistake." "What mistake was that, sir?" Vextrol's ears flattened against his skull, assuming that advanced technology makes for advanced warriors. The humans have been fighting wars since before their ancestors climbed down from the trees. We forgot that lesson. They never did. As the surrender signal was transmitted, Vextrol reflected on the strange paths that had led them all here, Drakon and human alike, to this moment of reckoning on a world that belonged to neither of them. The lights flickered one last time, then stabilized as emergency power rerouted. In the dim red glow, Commander Vextrol of the mighty Drakon technocracy prepared to meet his defeat with what dignity he could muster. Outside, in the forests of Kinta, Captain Marina Kovac, Demon to her enemies, Marina to her friends, watched through her spotting scope as the Drakon base lowered its flags. another world saved, another tyrant humbled, another day in humanity's long history of conflict and resilience. She keyed her throat microphone. Primary objective secured. All teams report status. As the replies came in, Marina allowed herself a small smile. The Drakon had brought their technocophage to destroy human technology. Instead, humans had reminded the galaxy of something the technocracy had forgotten. The most dangerous weapon in any war isn't the most advanced, it's the one wielded by those who remember how to fight without it. 5 years later, the Kinta Rehabilitation Zone sprawled across what had once been a battlefield. Where Drakon artillery had scarred the land, gardens now bloomed. Where sniper nests had been dug into hillsides, observation posts stood, staffed by a joint human-Kinta scientific corps. Former commander, now ambassador, Vextral walked the grounds with his human counterpart, trying not to show his discomfort at being back on this world. The restoration project exceeds all projections, Ambassador Chen remarked, consulting a simple paper notebook, a habit many humans maintain despite having access to advanced technology once more. The native ecosystem has shown remarkable resilience, as have the Kinta themselves, Vextral observed, watching a group of the antelope-like aliens instructing Drakon agricultural specialists in local farming techniques. I would not have predicted such forgiveness. Herbivores often understand the value of cooperation better than predators, Chen replied with diplomatic tact. They've had to evolve strategies beyond eat or be eaten. Vextral's whiskers twitched in what humans had learned was amusement, a lesson the technocracy is still struggling to internalize. Many on the High Council view the peace accord as a temporary setback, rather than a new direction. And you, Ambassador, what do you view it as? Survival, Vextral said bluntly. The conflict with humanity over Kinta cost us a third of our fleet, half our colonial holdings, and the lives of millions, all because we could not accept that a species might choose to protect another without seeking to dominate them. They reached a memorial garden, where stone tablets displayed the names of those lost in the war, Kinta, human, and Drakon alike. I lost 2 brothers here, Vextral said quietly. Both officers, both to your snipers. Ambassador Chen nodded respectfully. I lost my sister. Her transport was intercepted by the technocophage during the early evacuation attempts. They stood in silence for a moment. Predator and prey species united in remembrance. There is something I have always wondered, Vextral said finally. Your Captain Kovac, the one called Demon, how did she breach our command bunker? Our engineers found no evidence of forced entry or technological manipulation. Chen smiled slightly. She climbed, with her hands and feet, down the main airshaft. Your sensors were looking for drones, for bombs, for electronic intrusion, not for a single human with chalk on her hands and rubber-soled shoes. Vextral blinked slowly, processing this. That shaft is over 300 meters deep, with sections of it horizontal, and she climbed it, without equipment. Humans evolved as persistence hunters and gatherers who lived in trees, Ambassador. We can climb, swim, run, and crawl into spaces most species would consider impossible. It's not technology that makes us dangerous, it's adaptability. A lesson hard-learned, Vextral acknowledged. And where is the formidable captain now? Chen's expression grew complex. Officially, she's an attaché to the Kinta Protection Force. Unofficially, let's just say that whenever the technocracy's more aggressive elements start testing boundaries, they tend to find evidence that they're being watched. Through sniper scopes, a single human female continues to hold the mighty Drakon technocracy at bay. Vextral's ear flicked in what humans had learned was skepticism. Not just her, but the idea of her. The knowledge that no matter how advanced your technology, no matter how secure your position, there's always a way for determined opponents to level the playing field. Chen looked directly at Vextral. That's why the peace holds, Ambassador. Not because of treaties or reparations, or even mutual economic interests, but because both sides now understand what the other is capable of. As they continued their tour, a glint of sunlight caught Vextral's eye, a reflection from one of the distant hills overlooking the rehabilitation zone. Too precise to be natural, too steady to be accidental. "You're Captain Kovac," he said without looking toward the hill. "She's watching us now, isn't she?" Ambassador Chen followed his gaze and chuckled. "Probably. Old habits die hard, and she never did trust the Dracon much." "Wise of her," Vextral conceded. "We are, after all, predators by nature, as are we, Ambassador, as are we." In the distance, Captain Marina Kovac adjusted her spotting scope, watching the Dracon Ambassador and her human counterpart walk among the gardens that had once been killing fields. She no longer carried the TAC-50 that had made her legendary among both her allies and enemies. The rifle was displayed now in a museum on Earth, alongside other artifacts of what historians were calling the Quinta Intervention. But old habits did indeed die hard, and Marina found comfort in maintaining her vigil. Not because she expected treachery from Ambassador Vextral. She had come to respect the former commander during the peace negotiations, but because vigilance was the price of peace. Her communicator chirped softly. "Demon, this is Wayfinder. Check-in complete. Area secure." "Copy that, Wayfinder," she replied. "Maintain position. I'm heading back to base." As she packed her observation equipment, Marina reflected on the strange trajectory her life had taken. From orbital drops behind enemy lines to diplomatic security detail, from hunter to guardian. She took one last look through her scope at the unlikely pair walking among the memorial stones, human and Dracon, prey and predator species, working to heal the wounds of war. The universe was changing. Old enemies becoming cautious allies, former battlegrounds transforming into sanctuaries, and humans, once dismissed as primitive apes by the Dracon technocracy, now recognized throughout the galaxy as a species not to be underestimated. "Tiger, tiger, burning bright," Marina whispered to herself, remembering the old poem that had become something of a mantra among the snipers during the war. In the forests of the night. But now the tigers walked in daylight, under a watchful human eye, and the forests grew once more. Marina shouldered her pack and made her way down the hillside, another shadow moving through a landscape of both remembered violence and newfound hope. The war was over. The vigil continued. Such was the way of humanity. Such was the legacy of the human snipers.